You know, I was pretty excited about doing the Christmas special last week.
Oh, yeah?
The Christmas episode, but I think I might even be more excited about this week's episode because it's kind of a special theme again.
That's right. It's going to be Greek week.
It's Greek week.
I think I got all excited about Christmas last week, and then after listening to only Christmas music for 1 week, now I'm sort of over it.
I'm sort of like that, too. I was making breakfast this morning. I had some old Christmas records on, that wonderful Diana Krall swinging Christmas album.
All right.
So I really like that. I recommend that to everyone, by the way.
I'll try to get back into the mood because I've got to do some more shopping and things too. So
yeah. And this week we were just soaking up the Greek modes, and boy, those just carry sunshine in them, don't they?
Absolutely.
I mean like harsh sunshine. I don't mean like the beach kind of sunshine that you really enjoy. There's something kind of like really bright about it somehow. Yeah.
Before we move on, though, going back to last week's Christmas episode, I want to send out some thanks to Håkan Trigger and the Coco Chartreux Quartet for sharing our Christmas episode. It was called Salsa Santa. In addition to some great Latin music we had on there, hence the name, on both sides of the program, actually classical and jazz, we featured Coco Chartreux's new recording, Lost Christmas, a fun concept recording with new holiday music. So be sure to check that out if you haven't heard it yet. As a matter of fact, go back and listen to all of last week's episode to get you in the Christmas spirit. And this week we're here at episode 239. We've got one more regular episode after this one, and then we'll be on to our favorites of 2025. You're listening to Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. I'm your co-host, Russ.
I'm your co-host, Mike.
And we're going to have a mostly Greek program this week, but we're going to start off with a little bit of Baroque before that. Before we talk about the new music, I want to remind everyone that in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings we're going to discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist where you can get all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. If you can't see the full description or the recording list and links are hard to follow wherever you're listening to us now, you can always come over and check us out on our host site. That's Podbean, podbean.com. Everything's easy to follow there. If you enjoy the podcast, follow or subscribe wherever you like to listen to us, and tell a music-loving friend as well. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that helps us get listed in the music category recommendations on the various podcast hosting services, and that helps us grow our audience. Come over and follow us on our Facebook page, too, to get extra info and more new releases throughout the week. You can leave a message or comment there. Check us out on X, too. I post links to the new episodes there. We're Adult Music Pod on X. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We'll be playing music sample clips as part of our discussion, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists.
It sounds like the artists can use some support these days. Times are tough.
The payment for streams is very, very low.
Yeah.
But yet the CEOs of the streaming services seem to be pretty comfortable.
One of them in particular.
Yeah. So
one that we don't use.
Share the wealth. Anyway, I hope the music industry finally gets its grips on what to do with streaming and all the new technology that's out there, because it's not like it used to be.
Right. Get your friends some CDs for Christmas. In fact, get them a CD player, too, because they probably don't have one.
Yeah. They're getting hard to find these days.
Yeah. What's funny is I can't, lend anybody a CD. Not that I would anymore, but they don't have CD players anymore. All right, anyway, let's get into the music. Now, we have a warming up album here. I shouldn't say that. It's a good album, but this one isn't Greek. We're just kind of do an appetizer before we get to the Greek stuff.
A grand tour of the Baroque.
Yeah, grand tour of the Baroque. This is pretty interesting. In fact, it's kind of a grand tour of Germany. The album's called Grand Tour, and it's by the Freiburger Barockorchester, and I really like this group. Gottfried von der Goltz, who is the concert master, not the director or conductor. He might be. But they're kind of all members are equal sort of ensemble. Okay, so he gets the credit for being the concert master. This is on the Aparté label, released on November 14th, and it's very long, at an hour and 21 minutes. No great hardship, though. It's just a lot of music to listen to. All right, the theme of the album arose from Freiburger Barockorchester's regular journeys to Stuttgart and Berlin for their concert series. They decided to focus more closely on the music that would have been encountered on this journey in the 18th century, stopping also at some far corners of the Southwest along the way. The album was recorded live at Freiburg Concert House in Germany on 10 January 2025, but you'd never know it. There's no audience sound at all. I don't know how they achieved this. Maybe Baroque audiences are quiet or something. I don't know. I really don't go to classical concerts anymore just because some idiot always has to cough at my favorite part. There's not going to be any coughing on the CD. I kind of like that. You could have a drink while you're listening, which is also kind of nice.
Another bonus.
All right, this album has a whopping 38 tracks. Most of them are pretty short. So I'm going to limit myself to 2 or 3 samples per work. There are 6 works on the album. You'll have to hear the rest on your own. And I encourage you to do so, of course. Tracks 1 through 6, Johann Caspar Fischer, everybody's favorite Baroque composer, right? No, you've never heard of this guy, but worth hearing. Suite in D minor, Opus 1, number 4, or nicknamed Journal du Printemps. Oh, it's an interesting German name for a suite. So Fischer worked in Rastatt, and he worked there as Kapellmeister, composer, and singing teacher under Ludwig Wilhelm. This is still the way musicians make a living. You got to teach because that's where the money comes from. They've been doing this for centuries. He was a singing teacher under Ludwig Wilhelm, Margrave of Baden-Baden. This work is strongly influenced by Jean-Baptiste Lully, hence the French title. Now, Lully, interestingly enough, was Italian, and he changed his name to a French name because he worked at Louis XIV's court. And he was apparently a real jerk. Nobody liked him. And I think his musicians were happy when he finally died of gangrene. Because he used to conduct with a big, heavy kind of staff, and he banged it on his foot and got gangrene and eventually died. I'm laughing. Sad, but apparently he was not well liked, although he wrote good music. We still listen to it today. Okay, track 1, the first movement, Overture, or Ouverture in this case. The sound on this is hot and pretty dry, hot meaning it's loud. Okay, I like the way the lower instruments come out of the texture, closely recorded as they are. There's a period bassoon in there along with the bass. The sound is pretty raw, but the performance is tight and sort of edgy in its fastish tempo. And I want to say this is what turned me on to period instrument Baroque back when it first really became popular in the 1980s. There was a kind of rawness to the sound, and I liked rock music back then. I still do. But it released a kind of energy from what was on the page. It wasn't just this pretty sort of playing that we heard when we were very, very young. It starts as a typical French overture, then what eventually became a faster fugal section is in at 1 minute and 15 seconds. It's not a fugue here, it's just fast. It's got a dotted, bouncy quality to it. I'm going to play the faster section of this. Let's hear that come in. Ear candy in there too in the bass where you have that bouncy like bassoon line, and then it's taken over by a string bass at the end. Nice effect there. The French overture is then back at around the 2-minute mark, and the work has 2 fast sections framed by 3 French overture dotted rhythms. Track 2, Entrée. The opening has a fanfare-like quality to it, but sounds like a fast, stylized dance. It's in a lively rhythm and has a brief B section. Track 3, Rondeau. Let's hear the opening of this. we'll get out of it right about there. The rondo is given a nice flow here, like a calm river passing by. For the repeat of the theme, the ensemble quietens, playing with a hushed, late-at-night quality. Track 4, the fourth movement, Gavotte. This 42nd movement opens exclusively with winds. The strings eventually come in to answer, and the dance rhythm here is vigorous. Track 5, the fifth movement, Menuet. A flowing minuet, and one that's a little more complicated in its articulation than usual. It's also very brief. And track 6, the sixth movement and final movement, Passacaglia. A light flow is given to the Passacaglia theme. As is the way of a Passacaglia, when the theme goes off in new inflections, the bass line keeps repeating, and this particular composition shows that Fischer could generate some creative ideas over that repeating bass. This is a good movement to sample in full. It requires the entire length to hear the inventive inflections of melody over the repeating bass line. Tracks 7 through 13, Johann Christoph Pez, I guess you would say that name.
Yeah.
Like the Pez candy.
Dispensers, yeah.
Yeah. Concerto Pastorale. He's given his work an Italian name. So Stuttgart is the origin for this work. Pez has a strong Italian influence, as you can tell by the title. He was born in Munich, and in 1687 he obtained an appointment as musician with Max Emanuel, the Elector of Bavaria, who granted Pez a study trip to Rome between 1689 and 1692, where he met Arcangelo Corelli, the originator of the Concerto Grosso. Pez had numerous appointments, but was finally appointed to Stuttgart as Hofkapellmeister, as successor to Johann Sigismund Kusser, whose music we'll also hear on this album. Pez was popular during his lifetime, and Bach himself performed Pez's compositions in Weimar and Leipzig, so I guess we should be hearing more of him. Track 7 is Pastorale Adagio. The movement begins with droning pastoral low strings and shepherd-like flutes, and I guess they're recorders here, up top playing a lulling theme. The movement puts across the languor of a hot summer day, and I always like that feeling, so I had to sample this. Let's listen a little bit. Yeah, very lulling. I like it a lot. Track 8, second movement, Aria, Presto. Bustling opening rhythm with winds answering strings in breathy fashion. It almost sounds as if the flutes are being panted into, so fast are they played. Track 9, the third movement, Aria, Grave. This has a 3/4 rhythm, providing the framework for this smooth, hilly theme, again with strings and flutes answering each other. So it's kind of going up and down, up and down. I kind of like that. Track 10, the fourth movement, Aria, Pastorale, Presto. The rustic-sounding bass and faint droning texture provides the pastoral feel here. The theme is quick, in a hurry to get where it's going. At around the 1 minute mark, there's a slower lyrical section that continues to the end of the movement. Track 11, Minuet. This minuet really dances, and I think you've got to hear it. I like the way the winds are so accented in all of these works. Those Baroque wind instruments sound really fantastic. So the movement here is very high-spirited, and the middle trio features trilling recorders over a quarter-note bass line, which occasionally picks up a melody. An enjoyable movement that sounds inspired in the composition and playing too. Track 12 is the sixth movement, Passacaglia. This is a pretty long Passacaglia at 6 minutes. They can be spun out for long lengths of time. The theme flows and has short phrases to it. The bass line seems pretty long. Toward the beginning, the cello is playing bass duet with the recorders, and then the strings have the next variation over the bass line. A nice departure from the rigid bass line that we often hear. The cellos are asked to melodize as well as keep the harmonic pattern going. I particularly liked this brief flute melody. Okay, and you hear that constantly repeating bass line and new themes just keep coming up over it. Really fantastic and very inventive. Worth hearing all the way through again. There's some charming turns of phrase at various points of the movement, particularly those played by the recorders. Track 13, the seventh and final movement, Aria Presto. The work ends with this brief, chirpy dancing movement with burbling recorders answering string themes. The entire work has an Italian sense of rhythm that keeps it sunny and lively. Tracks 14 through 24, that's 11 tracks. Johann Sigismund Kusser, we mentioned him before. Ouverture in G minor, nicknamed Apollon Enjoué, or Apollo engaged or something like that in some activity or something. Ansbach is the location here. And Kusser was Pez's predecessor at Stuttgart, as mentioned. He was summoned in 1682 to the court in Ansbach, where he familiarized the musicians with French musical practice. Kusser was only in Ansbach for a year. Engagements then followed all over Europe. So track 14 is an overture, the first movement. The French overture rhythm is there, but there's quite a bit of business in the dotted rhythm, swirling dust among the king's steps, you might think. It's also taken on the fast side, and the wind instruments have a nasal quality. At 1 minute and 13 seconds, the fast section really takes off. It's energetic and almost frantic, and we need to hear this. Breaks go on and the French overture comes back. Like the opening Johann Caspar Fischer piece, this overture returns to its slow opening rhythm once the fast section unwinds. The fast section returns after the restatement of the opening overture theme, and we go through this a third time, and the movement ends. Track 15, the second movement, Les Chimères. The movement is quiet and is led by the cello. It's got a swaying rhythm and faint recorder and strings, all played with a hush. The bassoon's brief entries are appealing for the unexpected timbre. Sample of this one on your own. It's got a pleasant vibe. Track 16, Levant. This is the third movement. It means the winds. We get a wind machine effect at the beginning, and once the winds start up, it sounds like they're being blown out of the wind machine. I'll sample that opening. It's really charming. I hope everybody's listening to that racing bassoon at the bottom end of all that, too. It's all pretty exciting. We didn't get to hear the wind machine in the sample, but it's there. You should give it a listen all the way through. You hear it at the end again. Track 17 is the fourth movement, Gavotte. This is a pretty urgent gavotte, played at a pretty fast speed, as though the dancers are eager to finish the dance in order to start the next event. It comes across appealingly, though, giving the impression that it's testing the dancer's skill, and it's very brief. Track 18, the fifth movement, Menuets. Recorders and strings play this longing theme and dance rhythm. The trio is more high-stepping, led primarily by winds, recorders first, and answered by lower winds, perhaps oboes, and there are appealing bassoons playing the bass line. The opening minuet then comes back, and the rhythm seems less dancey after that quick-stepping trio. Track 19, the sixth movement, Gigue. A high recorder starts the piece solo. Continuo in the form of a lute is in quickly, and the strings then fill out the texture. The opening is appealing. Give it a sample on your own. The movement is very brief, just over 1 minute. Track 20, seventh movement, Echoes. Another brief movement led by enchanting high recorders, answered by lower reedy winds. Strings eventually come in, but the movement has an appealing, breathy quality. Track 21, the eighth movement, Branle de Village. This is a high-stepping dance with a heavy rhythm. It sounds a bit rustic and is led by the strings. Track 22, the ninth movement, Air, which I could use some of right about now. The strings play the theme with affection and a bit of sweetness when they hit the higher end. The movement is given a lightly gliding quality via the rhythm and tempo. I like hearing the lute timbre in continuo peeking out of the texture. Track 23, the 10th movement, Pavan. A brief movement, also given a heavier downbeat via the pressured bowing on the cellos. The overall timbre has a raw, sort of rustic quality to it. Track 24, the 11th and final movement, we've made it, Passepied. A flowing, dancing passepied, similar to what we've come to expect of this composer in this work. He's got a lot of upbeat movements, and it's only right to close with one. I want us to hear a bit of the winds, who take over from the strings at about the 40-second mark. The orchestration is appealing here. Various sections are given to different groups of instruments, and the opening theme repeats at the end. Tracks 25 through 30, Johann Ludwig Bach. I've never heard of this Bach before. This is his overture in G major. Johann Ludwig is a distant and highly venerated relative of Johann Sebastian, working in Meiningen, where he directed the Meininger Hofkapelle. I can't imagine what it's like to be in a family like this where everybody is this amazing musical talent. And you just got this one guy who's unbelievably talented, you know? He left behind almost exclusively spiritual repertoire. There are only 2 extant instrumental works, a concerto for 2 violins in D major, and this work that we're going to hear now. It's a reconciliation of Italian string virtuosity with sensitive counterpoint in the German tradition. Track 25 is the overture, the first movement. Johann Ludwig starts his overture out in the French style with a more pompous-sounding, hard downbeat of an opening. It's also played rather fast, but still sounds decorous. The material actually seems to cheer up after the first minute, as more layers of moving lines are added. A transformation of mood has occurred rather unexpectedly, and I'm pretty impressed by the effect. Let me sample towards the end of the opening, because it's kind of smoothed it out a bit here. A little bit more flow there. At 2 minutes and 13 seconds, the fast section begins, and at 3 minutes and 33 seconds, the French overture opening is neatly swerved into briefly, then the fast section starts up again. The movement ends with a brief restatement of the French overture. Track 26, the second movement, Air. The air has two-note back-and-forth patterns. For me, those brief moments when the bassoon is in are very exciting. The movement otherwise is pretty and has a sunny disposition. Johann Ludwig rides that undulating two-note pattern throughout the movement as a structuring agent. Track 27, the third movement, Menuet. The menuet is brief and has a swaying, dancing quality to it. It's very pleasant as well. The continuo here is a lute, and you can hear it a bit at the beginning. The bass is taken mostly by a bassoon, and I find that very appealing. There's a double bass in there too. Track 28, the fourth movement, Gavotte. The Gavotte is brief and rushes by. It actually has a rushing quality built into it as the opening moves upward and pauses. Track 29, the fifth movement, Air. The opening has a descending line that writes itself at the end of the phrase. A reedy oboe has a lot of the counter melodies playing out behind the strings. It's a quickly paced movement. And track 30, the sixth movement, Bourrée. This Bourrée is celebratory in tone. We can hear the oboe clearly in this movement. Let's give it a listen. That's really most of the movement. The bassoon, by the way, in Baroque music really has a lot of really interesting lines, and a lot of people just don't really notice it because they don't listen to the bass. There's great bassoon playing all over this album. It's really fantastic. Tracks 31 through 35, Georg Philipp Telemann, a composer who I have to say I've come to admire a bit more this year than I did ever before. We heard some good music by him. This is his Concerto for Flute and Violin in E minor, TWV 52, lowercase e3. The lowercase e means it's a minor key work. This and the next work are located on the last stretch of the journey from Eisenach to Berlin. Telemann was entrusted in Eisenach with the installation of a Hofkapelle that was just 11 members and was still in its infancy. Track 31 is the first movement, Allegro. Strings play the opening figure in unison. The flute is in at around the 13-second mark briefly, and finally has a longer line at around 25 seconds. This is taken at a fast but natural-sounding pace. Telemann taps the brakes for the flute to have a more breathed-out solo moment at 1 minute and 13 seconds. Then it's back to fast figuration. At the end of this section, the lead violin has a solo moment. The opening downward theme is back, and the movement reaches a cadence. Track 32, the second movement, Adagio. I've been impressed by Telemann's orchestrational inventiveness within the Baroque idiom all year long. Here he seems to have lifted an effect from Vivaldi, with gentle pizzicato strings supporting the lyrical flute and violin solos. Yeah, haunting and impressive. Caught my ear right away. This is an engaging lyrical movement worth sampling in full. Track 33, the third movement, Presto. Racing violin line featuring the solo violin and sounding Vivaldian. The frenetic pace suddenly slows at the end as a droning bass supports the solo violin in a transitional passage. Track 34, the fourth movement, Adagio. This movement is slow and features the violin as a solo instrument again. The flute hasn't been heard in this and the previous movement, but helps to transition the work to its final movement. Track 35 is the fifth movement, Allegro. It's an energetic and again Vivaldian line played by the orchestra. The flute is in at 28 seconds. Yeah, I hate to come out when the flute's really going there. We can hear the violin and flute playing at the same time here, sometimes alternating, sometimes playing their own lines at the same time. And tracks 36 through 38, yes, the master himself, Johann Sebastian Bach, Brandenburg Concerto No. 2 in F major, BWV 1047. Bach was in Weimar when Telemann was in Eisenach. Bach accompanies us from Eisenach to Berlin, where in 1718 he set out to acquire a new harpsichord. It was then that he met Christian Ludwig, the Margrave of Brandenburg-Schwedt, to whom he dedicated the 6 Brandenburg concertos in 1721, some of which had already been composed as concertos. Track 36, the first movement, Allegro, is given a pretty quick pace, in keeping with what we've been hearing in this piece. Detail comes up nicely on the recording. Yeah, transparency on this recording has been great all the way through, and it really pays off here with all those quick-moving inner voices. You can hear them all. The trumpet playing in this and the third movement are always a marvel, and we're hearing some athletic playing here. The inner voices project well in the performance and on the recording. Track 37, the second movement, Andante. The middle movement has a violin and various winds playing the lyrical theme. The writing is beautiful in the way the theme is passed around to the soloists, and Freiburger makes sure you notice via their projection of sound on the closely mic'd recording. Continuo is highly articulated. The chaotic harmony just before the final cadence is emphasized. And track 38, the third and final movement, Allegro assai. The trumpet rings out with this high-speed theme. Yeah, the rhythm is given a really nice bounce in this version, too. Playing is virtuosic throughout, particularly on the trumpet. The tempo itself is taken on the fast side of Allegro assai, but not to the point where it sounds like it's being whipped. All details come through in high focus. This is a real pleasure to listen to. The last note is taken on a staccato, an odd way to end the album. Well, the world these days feels like it's closing down, and for someone who's traveled freely in past decades, the album comes to me as a welcome relief, and it has something of the quality of going from place to place freely. It actually felt like a freeing album, as so much Baroque instrumental music does. I got that sense from the program, but the playing is, as it always has been from this ensemble, energetic and joyful. Energy is injected into all of these works, often via slightly fast tempos, at which the ensemble still manages to strongly articulate each voice in the work. The very familiar Brandenburg Concerto No. 2 makes the Freiburger Barockorchester's virtuosic and lyrical ability abundantly clear. The album put me in mind of happier times. I found it cheering on top of its very obvious musical qualities, and for that reason, I find this record not only absorbing, but valuable.
An interesting program of Baroque music for sure. The booklet notes give a historical and geographical background, and the program itself highlights the stylistic differences between the composers. The individual line movement in the Fischer was really fun to follow in the clear orchestration, and the recorder is featured prominently in the Pez, with fluttery parts played very skillfully. And the contrast from there with the Kusser from the weighty first movement when it comes in really stands out. The Johann Ludwig Bach overture had interesting bassoon bass lines, and then the Talitman really covers a range from a placid beginning to an intense ending. I thought the Brandenburg trumpet performance was great for a live performance. It's really regal with nice altissimo playing, and I'm guessing that's a period instrument there because it sounds a little bit thin compared to what it sounds like on modern instruments, but the tonal quality is really unique. And I was really surprised to find out this was a live album because in addition to, as you mentioned, there being no applause sounds, it sounds really like studio quality. So the sonics are great on this recording too.
Yeah, how they got such detail out of a live recording is really amazing. That one's highly recommended. Okay, off to warmer climates.
Yes.
Greece. Okay. Our first composer is a rather famous one, Mikis Theodorakis. He lived 1925 to 2021, almost made it to 100. Works for soloist and orchestra is what I called this. It's 3 orchestral works, all of them have a soloist in them. And this is performed by the Athens State Orchestra, conducted by Kornilios Michailidis. And it's on the Genuin label, released on November 7th. And it's very long, at 1 hour and 24 minutes, but well worth it. I really enjoyed this entire album. Now, in the booklet, Theodorakis is quoted as saying, there are melodies, or ideas, that require further elaboration to be fully illuminated. This leads me to new orchestrations. I wish to believe that all of my works, from song to symphony, form a unified body. Life is a struggle between harmony and chaos. The triumph of life is spiritual transcendence through harmony. Well, I like the concept, so I was really interested in hearing this music, and it turns out that's well worth hearing. Now, Theodorakis was born on the island of Chios and studied in Athens and Paris, where he was mentored by Olivier Messiaen. He wrote the famous film score for Zorba the Greek with Anthony Quinn and for Serpico with Al Pacino, as well as others, so you probably have heard his music before. He also left behind a large trove of works for the concert hall. This guy composed a lot. And the first work for me was a real discovery. Tracks 1 through 3, Sinfonietta for solo flute, piano, and string orchestra from 1947. This features Stathis Karapanos on flute, Titos Gouvelis on piano, and the work finally reached its final form in 1995. It blends classical form with melodies shaped by Byzantine and folk idioms. Track 1, Prelude and Chorale, Adagio. This starts with a crescendo on piano chords, all underpinned by a droning bass that makes it sound ancient. This pattern then decrescendos and repeats. It's a compelling opening. The flute is in quietly and with a heavy low-end tone at about the 30-second mark. The entire opening is somber and mysterious, sounding a bit like the dawn of an earlier time. The harmony is modal at around the 1 minute and 30-second mark in the strings, and the piano picks up that theme. Louder, more ringing strings are heard at the 2-minute mark. At around 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the piano, then the flute, step out with solo material. The flute and piano really are of a piece with the orchestra here, assisting in setting mood and commenting on it rather than soloing. At 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the flute plays in its eerier, higher end. There are a lot of dramatic gestures in the work. I rather liked the modal theme heard at 5 minutes and 40 seconds, and as it's hard to grab a segment of this constantly shifting movement that sums it up, I'm going to choose to sample this section. This is from around 5 minutes and 40 seconds into the work. So quiet, rather spare, and really enchanting. The theme builds to shriller tones in the flute's high end, we heard the beginning of that, and reaches a climax at around the 7-minute and 20-second mark. There's a pause, and the opening gesture of the movement is heard again, but now in the strings. Its floating modal quality is apparent in this guise. The part from around the 8-minute mark on is touching in its modal lines and orchestration. The flute ends the movement on a modal line with the orchestra in a decrescendo. Track 2, the second movement, Scherzo, Allegro vivace. Emphatic piano chords and line at the opening, a bit reminiscent of Beethoven's emphaticness. The flute comes in with a rushing quality to the theme that softens the texture a bit. There's some impressive virtuosity here from the piano at points. So a little tag team there between the flute, the piano, and the strings. The rhythm is dance-like in quality. I'd guess a traditional folk dance, or at least it has the quality of one. At around the 2-minute and 50-second mark, the flute gets a quieter, more folk song-like melody with simple rhythmic accompaniment. I also love the harmony on the piano's opening chords, heard again at around the 3-minute and 30-second mark. There's a fantastic flute run up into the higher end of the instrument just after the 4-minute mark, and the movement ends dramatically, fortissimo, on those opening chords and harmony. Track 3, the third and final movement, marked Finale, Andante mosso. The finale starts quietly, weary-sounding after the previous movement. The flute enters with light piano accompaniment at around the 1-minute and 40-second mark. The theme changes to something folk song-like at around 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and the music crescendos, with the flute going into the high end and the piano rumbling on low chords. There are some pretty intriguing harmonies in this movement, as throughout the work. There's a dramatic crescendo moving past the 6-minute mark to a climax, then the music quickly diminuendos, and the piano and flute have some time to play a plaintive theme, the piano playing chords in a straight quarter note rhythm. The piece ends gently. Tracks 4 through 10, Rhapsody for Guitar and Symphony Orchestra. There's an original guitar and orchestra version written in 1982 to 1983, and this is after Romancero Gitano, Theodorakis' setting of poems by Federico Garcia Lorca, composed in 1967. The third and final version for guitar and orchestra, which we're hearing here, was first performed, I guess, in 1995. The soloist is Orestis Kalampalikis on guitar. In the final version of the work, Theodorakis omitted the mezzo-soprano and choir, emphasizing the solo guitar and increasing accessibility. Track 4, the first movement, Allegro con brio, Ballad of the Accursed. This starts with a great rising modal harmony that the winds then pick up as the guitar accompanies with arpeggios. The movement glides in an appealing way. The guitar is given a lot of room sound on the recording, but comes across with clarity. The recording sounds spacious. The guitar playing is attractive, the guitarist filling in between phrases with some appealing figures. This movement resembles a movie theme in its floating, wide-open spaces quality. Track 5, the second movement, Andantino, to Allegretto, Death of Antonino el Combrino. Winds and guitar are a good combination, as we hear again at the opening of this work, as sustaining wind chords change over arpeggiated chords on the guitar. I could use a little less reverb on the orchestra on this track. The quality of the flute's tone isn't fully present on the recording because of it. At 1 minute and 52 seconds, there's a tremendous timpani rumble very up front that almost took my head off. It returns several times as the next theme plays out on the trumpet. The guitar plays quick figures here as the orchestra has the theme. It seems the guitar is in the rhapsodizing element in this work, at least so far. Track 6, the third movement, Andante, Died for Love. The guitar has the opening and is lightly accompanied by strings. Winds again play the thematic material as the guitar falls into accompaniment with the strings. The themes are all modal and instantly appealing. There's a lightly dancing quality to the theme once it gets past the 2-minute mark. The movement ends warmly. Track 7, the fourth movement, Andante, Preciosa, and the Wind. The guitar again starts with an ostinato arpeggiated line as the winds play the themes. The winds seem to have all of the thematic material in this work. I have no problem with that, being a big fan of wind instruments. It seems the guitar is in the work for timbral reasons, invoking Garcia Lorca's Spanish heritage. The movements go by in song-like fashion, setting a mood evoked by the poem, I guess. The theme changes at 2 minutes and 45 seconds or so, with the winds playing in ostinato while the guitar gets some rhapsodic time. At 3 minutes and 19 seconds, the mood changes again, and at 4 minutes and 40 seconds, the familiar material returns, with the brass playing melodic material as the winds play ostinato figures. The guitar continues in its improvisatory fashion. This is the last theme of the movement, which again ends calmly. We move to track 8, movement 5, Lento to Allegro, the arrest of Antonino el Combrino. See, he appears a lot in these poems. An agitated chord comes in forte at the beginning, and the guitar is in Spanish fashion. We haven't heard enough of Orestis Kalampalikis in these samples, or really in this work, so I'm going to sample him here. The writing in this movement is in heavily Spanish rhythmic idiom, one might even say a stereotypical Spanish idiom, and continues that way to the end. Track 9, the sixth movement, Allegro Moderato, the Gypsy Nun. Winds again have the theme as the guitar decorates via arpeggiated figures. The flow and rhythm here are in song-like mode. Theodorakis really seems to favor wind instruments. They're used heavily throughout this work. The movement repeats the opening theme numerous times in different orchestrations. The melodic modal theme itself is very appealing. It had me drifting off into happy memories. The movement goes on for 8 minutes, and I don't blame Theodorakis for extending it. It's appealing material. There's a change to a new section at around the 4-minute mark where the guitar strums strongly as a French horn gets the theme. The theme changes again at 6 minutes and 15 seconds or so. The opening theme returns at the end at around the 7-minute mark. This was my favorite movement in the Rhapsody. And track 10 is the 7th and final movement, Andante, Ballad of the Black Sorrow. Dramatic timpani roll opens the movement, followed by an urgent and dark, deep string theme. The strings waltz as the guitar plays a repeating note. By the end, the music settles into a flowing, calm melodic theme in a Spanish melodic idiom. The end builds up via timpani to a final big chord. And then we get to tracks 11 through 19, Rhapsody for Violoncello and Symphony Orchestra. Violoncello is, of course, the cello. This was written in 1997, and Timotheos Gavriilidis-Petrin is the cellist. This was Theodorakis' last symphonic work and his only one for cello and orchestra. The 9 movements of this are named after the 9 muses of Greek mythology. The first one is track 11, Euterpe, or in English we'd say Euterpe. She's the muse of song, and people say elegiac poetry. It could be lyric poetry too. Let me just start by sampling this. The movement has an interesting minimal orchestration to it. The cello is only in fragmentarily at the beginning, but gets longer lines as the movement goes on. The movement sounds like a pencil drawing in an interesting way. It gets bolder after the 1-minute mark, with timpani marking a new section. The movement is modal and melodic and appealing. Track 12, the second movement, Erato, the muse of erotic poetry. Pretty easy to remember that one. Erato, erotic. The cello plays figures as the orchestra produces flowing, liquid lines. Melody comes out at times. There's a climax at 1 minute and 28 seconds, but the movement goes on. It flows beautifully like the first movement. Track 13, the third movement, Melpomene, the muse of tragedy. Drooping figures in the strings and winds open the movement. The orchestration is stark and evokes a barren landscape. The cello is in at around the 56-second mark, but only for brief lines taken over by the winds. I haven't sampled the cello in this work, so let's hear that section. Sort of a wry sounding line there at the end of that sample. So what generally happens in this movement is the cello will start a line and get absorbed by the orchestra. Track 14, the fourth movement, Calliope, or in English we'll say Calliope, the muse of epic poetry. This has an epic opening with the timpani. A striding theme like the marching of armies is heard in the orchestra, here finished by the cello. The melodic theme is attractive and falls pleasantly on the ear. Track 15, the fifth movement, Clio, the muse of history. I've also heard this pronounced Clio in English. An ostinato line in the bass supports the slippery winds. The cello plays a theme that starts solidly and ends in a suddenly skittering line. The work continues in this way. I should say all of these movements fall between 2 and 3 minutes. They set a mood and are gone. The cello plays a quick figure leading to the end of the movement. Track 16, the sixth movement, Urania, the muse of astronomy. This movement is a bit longer than 3 minutes and starts lyrically with the cello. Midway through, the cello takes up an ostinato line and the winds take turns with the melody. Toward the end, both the light-toned orchestra with distant-sounding strings and the cello line drift weightlessly together. Track 17, the seventh movement, Terpsichore, the muse of dance. This is a dramatic dance movement, more like the dance you'd witness at a ceremony. Maybe it's a little too excitable for a ceremony, but there's some interesting orchestration in the winds and brass at times. The movement becomes more vigorous as it goes on. Track 18, the eighth movement, Polymnia, muse of hymns and sacred poetry. This has the warmth of a movie theme. It's solemn, and the cello's tone gives it extra gravity. Gavriilidis-Petrin's playing is very effective here. At track 19, the ninth movement, Thalia, the muse of comedy. And I always kind of found this name kind of funny, and it's just easy to remember this one too. Hey, Thalia! All right? Can imagine her in a comedy. Pizzicati and the strings and cello accompany an oboe theme. There's even woody percussion. The comedy here is decorous, and the music has a reverence to it. A broader rhythm, hammered out by the timpani, appears at the 1 minute and 30-second mark. Strings play a surging modal theme, and the cello maintains a gliding sound in its melodies. The movement and work ends with a powerful forte. First, it's very good to have an entire album dedicated to Theodorakis' concert works. He's a composer that loves using modes, and for that reason, among others, I was very attracted to his compositions. I was pretty knocked out by the opening Sinfonietta. One reason we do this podcast is to discover music new to us, and we've got that here. This is a piece I'll be revisiting. It's got modal harmony and Greek or Byzantine-sounding idioms in the modality and harmony all through its three movements, and a lot of harsh heat and sunshine to it. The guitar rhapsody had a filmic feel to me. It's easier on the ear than the Sinfonietta, and the guitar is there more for Spanish atmosphere than as a solo instrument. The cello rhapsody featured 9 brief movements dedicated to the 9 muses, each setting a different mood. The warmth of Timotheos Gavriilidis-Petrin's playing made this work a highlight. So, here are 3 concert works by a 20th century composer whose film music may be familiar to you. 2 of these works have a Greek feeling to them via their use of modes. It's an album filled with sunshine, but some of that sunshine is harsh.
Yeah, this was a really enjoyable recording. I like the Sinfonietta. Theodorakis' composing style is quite interesting. He seems to use classical forms, but his melodies have romantic sentiments, and that's balanced out with a lot of modal harmony. Really interesting. I like in the finale how it builds tension with the flute lines over the flowing strings, and the harmonic tension builds too, and then it's released in a really nice way. And I like the balance of brooding and then hopeful emotions that the whole work conveys. I guess it sort of relates to his experiences in difficult times in Greece. The Rhapsody for guitar and orchestra is really beautiful. It's easy to enjoy, and Theodorakis managed to balance the orchestrations to complement rather than overpower the guitar, which I think is kind of difficult. And the strings and woodwinds have flowing lines. The trumpet and horn get nice solos in the work, and in those parts the guitar is more in an accompaniment style than sort of the melody instrument. And the Rhapsody for cello and orchestra has unique melodies for each movement that are easy to enjoy too. And as you said, the cello sort of introduces something and then it gets enveloped in the orchestration, which was really enjoyable. Yeah, I got a real kind of picture of different aspects of this composer by listening to this album.
Yeah, I may have to pick this one up. I don't think I have any of his music in my collection here, and this would be a really welcome addition.
Yeah.
Okay, our contemporary composer of the week, George Kontogiorgos, and his album Hellenic Music for Harp and Bassoon. Well, there's so many appealing things about this title that I couldn't pass this up. This is performed by Rachel Talitman on harp, Mavroudes Troullos on bassoon, who I've been in touch with during the week. I should have asked him how to pronounce his name. I hope I came close. And Ensemble Harpeggio. Clever. Last week we had the Sarabanda. This week, Ensemble Harpeggio. Anyway, this is released on the Harp and Company label, which I believe Rachel Talitman, the harpist, runs. And it was released on December 5th, 2025 on streaming services. The label's website says it was released on October 22nd, so they may have released it sort of privately, and then it finally made its way to streaming on December 5th. I hadn't realized it when I chose the album, but we've actually heard the music of George Kontogiorgos on adult music before. On November 6th, 2023, episode 139,
right.
Piano Everywhere, we heard his work De Chirico and other works for piano trio and duo, performed by the Galan Trio, released on the Phasma label. So welcome back to the podcast, Music of George Kontogiorgos. Kontogiorgos, it says in the booklet note, was born in Lamia, Hellas. Interesting, they're using the Greek name for Greece.
Yeah.
Anyway, he studied at the Municipal Conservatory there. The album cover is a painting in pastel colors depicting a bassoonist and a harpist, our soloists, I guess, but it seems their hair color was reversed for the painting. I don't know why that happened. That's judging by the photos inside. I may be wrong. Who knows? Anyway, tracks 1 through 10. This is the main work on the album, Tabula Rasa for bassoon and harp. This work is the result of a request by harpist Rachel Talitman for a work for harp and bassoon. Kontogiorgos wound up composing this suite, which got its name because when he started composing, he didn't have any specific idea ready. nor any specific ready-made idea in his mind. He gathered material both original and inspired by various other composers and forms of music, and produced this work, which he says is without coherence, written in classical, lyrical, minimalist, and atonal, even pop rock style. So he pretty much put everything he knows, I guess, into this work. The titles of some movements refer to the initial ideas that were the trigger for his musical composition. On top of these styles, an attempt was made to exploit the virtuosity of the two performers by challenging the two instruments, including extensive techniques. Track 1, the first movement, Sunset. Hearing the bassoon's long sustained tones at the beginning of the movement already puts me in the mood of times long ago. This sunset happened in ancient Greece as far as I'm concerned. The harp provides single notes and sounds like a piano until we get to hear it play some slow arpeggios solo at around the 1 minute and 10 second mark. I love the sound of the bassoon on this track, especially its entry in the low end just past the 1 minute and 30 second mark. The slow harp arpeggios that accompany have a hazy shimmer to them. The movement continues more or less in this manner, at least rhythmically. Melodic material weaves into new patterns. At the 4 minute and 37 second mark, we hear a familiar theme from the beginning in the bassoon, and it has a pretty ending. Track 2, the second movement, Tempest. There's a bit more urgency here, with the bassoon's upward moving gesture trying to raise the alarm. And the bassoon very busy. He gets repeating two-note phrases afterwards as the harp provides harmony and a wet kind of raindrop tone. Both instruments here are evoking via repetitive patterns the wind and rain of a storm, though it seems like a light storm here. Track 3, Broken Mirror. The bassoon starts with long tones. Its turn away from that tone is pleasingly modal. The harp accompanies with quick arpeggiated chords. I like the pre-Baroque, even pre-Renaissance of the harmony here. At around the 1 minute and 15 second mark, the music goes into a more standard diatonic harmony for the melody, and the harp accompanies beautifully with a lightly dancing feel to the rhythm. At 3 minutes and 15 seconds, the opening returns on the bassoon, now in a new key, or a new starting modal point. The piece ends modally. Track 4 is the fourth movement, Nightmare, and this was initiated from Etude 13, L'Escalier du Diable, by George Ligeti. This was for the piano. The bassoon initiates the melodic line in the deeper end of the instrument. There's a bit of enchantment to the harp line, which contrasts with the lumpier turns in the bassoon, which make it sound a bit comical. At 1 minute and 42 seconds, a rising figure, putting me in mind of Ligeti's perpetually rising Escher-like line, appears, but then it quickly disappears. There are a lot of chromatically sequenced phrases in the bassoon line. It sounds like it's not getting anywhere harmonically. Is that where the nightmare lies? By 3 minutes and 30 seconds, we're still hearing this line. Is he going to get to that climax? Well, you'll have to hear the full track to find out. Track 5, the 5th movement, minimal mode. There's plenty of ostinato here as the bassoon plays early Philip Glass-like two-note patterns, which the harp provides gentle harmony for. Troullos has some quick, repeated notes to play, and he dispatches them with some virtuosity. I hear a lot of Philip Glass-type patterns in this work. They're less noticeable in the gentler-sounding harp, but they're there. The piece is about the shifting minimal patterns in the bassoon. Track 6, the 6th movement, Tsakonikos, based on the Peloponnesian Greek dance of the same name. The harp starts this off with gentle high notes. The bassoon comes in its lower range, duplicating the harp's high melodic figure. The harp eventually adds harmony. The melody is short and square like a folk song, or dance in this case. Kontogiorgos has a knack for evoking the ancient past. Let's hear a bit of this at around the 1 minute and 40 second mark. The work moves on the slow side of mid-tempo and is repetitive in its material as dance would be. Track 7, 7th movement, aria. The bassoon plays this salon-like aria with gentle strummed arpeggios on the harp. Troullos tapers the ending of some of his phrases well for emotional effect. I like hearing Troullos here. He in effect gets a chance to sing. The melody goes through a series of accompanimental variations, with the harp providing different textures as the work goes on. Track 8, the 8th movement, Little Fun, or it could be Fune. Inspired by Debussy's Prélude à l'après-midi d'enfant, you can hear Debussy's opening flute melody in the bassoon line at the very beginning, and it really reappears throughout the work. There are turns of phrase that recall Debussy's prelude throughout the work too. We're going to go on to track 9, the 9th movement, Sephardic tune, based on a Jewish traditional theme. This has a folk song sense of phrasing to it too. The bassoon line is in the low end and comes across with some weight. It gets into a repeating phrase as the harp accompanies with some heavy bass end strums. The melody pretty much hangs around that repeating phrase, sometimes winding away from it with slightly changed patterns. The bassoon plays the entire piece in its very satisfying low end. And track 10, the final movement, Ballade. The final movement starts with a light harp line. The bassoon is then in with the melody, this time reaching into the high end of the instrument's range. The phrasing is song-like. After an initial statement, the movement goes into a series of variations on the theme, or at least the phrase lengths of the theme continue after it's initially stated. The harp gets a solo section after the 2-minute mark, then the bassoon is back with harp accompaniment. I want to sample the harp and bassoon together, so I'll isolate the section after the harp solo. And we'll come out of that right there on that pause. Varying sections continue until the end. Okay, tracks 11 through 13, the Archaic Concerto for Harp and Strings. This work was a commission from Rachel Talitman, who really is the mover and shaker around the creation of this album and its music. She plays the harp, the strings are played by Harpeggio. Now, track 11 is the first movement, the Song of Skekilos. The Skekilos epitaph dates between the 1st and 2nd century AC, which is engraved on a stele discovered in Tralles, an ancient Hellenistic town on the coast of Asia Minor. And I remember in a music class I took, we were shown this as an example of the very earliest evidence we have of music written down on a stone. It was suggested to us that we might want to write our own music on stone so that it lasts for millennia. The piece starts gently and gorgeously with the solo harp, again gorgeously played by Rachel Talitman. The modal melody here tells me I could have hung out in ancient Greece, because this atmosphere I could kind of live in, I think. The strings come in at the 42nd mark to cement the theme in place. They're on the dry side of the recording, but when they get the melody, their warmth comes through. I want to get both the harp and strings into the sample, and they tend to play separately in this movement, so let's sample them from around 1 minute and 30 seconds. Now you want to think that melody you just heard is close to 2,000 years old, and it was probably written on this guy's tombstone, his stele, because he liked it or because he wrote it or something like that, and it's still being heard and enjoyed by audiences today via Kontogiorgos setting it. I just find that really magical.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, there's a gentle sway to the rhythm once the strings get hold of the melody that's appealing too. We hear the solo harp again at the end as it was at the beginning of the movement. The movement itself ends gently with the harp and is a high string harmonic, all reinforced by a final chord by the strings and a gliss of the harp. Track 12, the second movement, First Delphic Hymn to Apollo. The tune here is attributed to Athenaeus, son of Athenaeus. So I guess he had the same name as his dad. This and the next Delphic hymn were composed for the Athenians' Pythades, a ritual procession from Athens to Delphi. They both date to around 128 to 138 BC and were engraved on 2 marble pieces found on the exterior south face of the treasury of the Athenians. They were discovered in 1893 by the French archaeologist Théophile Homol and are kept in the Delphi Museum. A year later, the German philologist Henri Weil succeeded in reconstructing the text from the fragments found, while the musicologist Theodor Reinach in 1912 managed to transcribe the music into modern notation. This was achieved thanks to a treatise by Alypius, musicologist of late antiquity, 3rd century AD. There's something a bit more rustic to the strings sound here. The harp comes in and adds a gentle touch. The articulation there is really interesting. It's not legato. It's just kind of like these accents. There's an appealing drift and sway to this melody as well. The strings are dry and very literal in outlining the theme, which is played with no legato, which would be anachronistic perhaps. The movement sticks to that theme throughout, redecorating it. Track 13, the third movement, Second Delphic Hymn to Apollo. Now I gotta say, the notes say that the third movement is called Python Dance, an original composition inspired by the mythical dragon Python, which Apollo killed when he passed from the Peloponnese to the opposite Phocis to establish the Oracle of Delphi, while the second Delphic Hymn to Apollo, the composition of which is attributed to the musician Laminius, son of Thoinus of Athens, was the theme for the development and variations of the fourth movement, the last part of the concerto. And we only get this movement here, and I'm wondering if the two are combined in this movement. I can't really tell. The movement starts with strings, and the harp comes in with a sort of stylized dance melody. At 2 minutes, the harp gets a solo passage, lightly sparkling with its accompanying arpeggios. At 2 minutes and 40 seconds, a hymn-like theme is played on the harp. Perhaps this is the second Delphic hymn. I really wish I knew what it sounded like beforehand so I could just pull it out, you know? The strings play the theme in their dry acoustic, after which the harp sparkles again in a solo passage. To be honest, the entire movement sounds like it could be that Delphic hymn, as the title suggests. It ends rather abruptly in the strings. The 10-movement tabula rasa is the central work here due to its length, and the two musicians Rachel Talitman and Mavroudes Troullos convey the music with antique grace. I especially enjoyed Troullos' bassoon tones here. He plays a few of these works in the low end, but he's very melodic in the high end as well for a lot of it, so he uses the whole range of his instrument. He gets a reedy sound that we at adult music really enjoy hearing in the low end. Both Rachel Talitman and Mavroudes Troullos characterize the individual movements well. There's a lot of variety in this piece, and they adapt admirably to the different styles. The work itself allows George Kontogiorgos to compositionally display his many modal approaches as well as his deep knowledge of classical music tradition, taking inspiration from Ligeti and Debussy and even Philip Glass in different movements. The harp is always a welcome timbre to my ears, and hearing Rachel Talitman in the modal harmonies of Tabula Rasa, as well as in the swaying themes of the Archaea Concerto, was a real pleasure. The recording of the Archaea Concerto is on the dry side, which favors the harp, giving it definition, but I think it serves the piece here too, giving it a rock dust-like archaic quality. It's new music that will appeal on a first listen, And modes like those used by Kontogiorgos in these works have a hypnotic quality that will keep the listener interested on repeated listens too, beguiling the listener with evocations of the ancient world and its remains.
Troullos really brings out the beauty of the bassoon on this recording. Kontogiorgos' parts here for him are mostly in the high register, and he makes even the more mechanical and rhythmic sections of movements seem very flowing. Each movement brings something new musically. Rachel Talitman's harp sounds magical throughout. It's somewhat dryly recorded, but you can hear her articulation very clearly throughout. The archaic concerto was really fascinating. Hearing these ancient melodies on the harp was enchanting. The modes are always interesting, and I liked how the arrangements of the strings worked together to interact with the harp lines, especially in the first Delphic hymn to Apollo. I found that interaction really appealing. Yeah, a really unique recording and a really interesting combination of instruments that proves to be more satisfying than the initial wonderment I had about what it would sound like. Okay, over to the jazz side. We've got an all-Greek jazz program here. We're going to start out with a debut recording from a group called the Gangtet. It's called Manifesto. It's a self-release. It came out November 30th. This is what it says on their Bandcamp page. The Gangtet is a group of 4 young jazz musicians from Thessaloniki. Manifesto is their debut, consisting of 8 original tunes. And that's about it. I don't know much about these guys.
They have a cool name.
Yeah, they do have an active Instagram page if you want to see what they look like and see some of the other things they've shared there. The group is made up of Yannis Antonoglou on the flute, Andreas Papakonstantinou on the electric guitar, Nicholas Yosos on acoustic and electric bass, and Yannis Papageorgiou on drums. This was recorded in Thessaloniki at Q Productions by Yannis Mavroudes. We're going to start out on the recording with an original composition by Papakonstantinou, Cloud Surfer. It's a funky rock beat that gets this started. Yosos' electric bass sound is really thick. The melody is in a 24-measure ABA shape, and the speedy lines in the middle section on both flute and guitar are pretty neat. Let's hear things get started on this recording. Antonoglou continues on with a flute solo. He gets some breathy intensity here, so let's check him out on this tune. Papakonstantinou is next on guitar with warm-toned and springy phrases. Yosos has a bass solo too with some funky and bluesy licks. It comes down a bit softer for Papagiorgio to build up a drum solo with attention to dynamics, and they pick up from the B section of the melody to an ending with a final flourish. We've got a cloud theme going on into track 2 here, Cloud Split, and this is from Antonoglou. Papakonstantinou gets this going with a guitar pattern that has a bouncy pedal tone and rising chords. The rest of the band joins in as it repeats. Iorzos is on acoustic bass for this one. It has a long melody section at 56 measures. It plays out in 3 16-measure sections with a little pause after the first. The flute phrases are choppy, and then the third section switches up to swing with a final 8-measure section that recalls the middle section with flute and guitar together. Let's check it out. Swinging there. Papakonstantinou is up first for a guitar solo. Antonoglou has a flute solo next that gets energetic fills from Papagiorgio. Guitar and flute do some trading with Papagiorgio's drums before an extended drum solo. Let's hear some of their interaction. After the drum solo, it comes down soft with a repeated note bass line back to the opening guitar idea into a final melody section. Track 3 is by Nicholas Iorzos, How I Think Of. This gets started with guitar for an 8-measure section, making a 6/8 rhythmic feel. Acoustic bass joins in for another time around. I'll jump in about 30 seconds in where the minor flute melody starts so we can hear more of it. It's in an AA-BA shape, and it brightens attractively on the B section. Antonoglou continues on with a flute solo that gets some nice intensity. This is Yozos' tune though, so let's check out his bass solo on here. To the melody from there with a peaceful coda ending. Track 4 is by Antonoglou, Her, the Sun. Papakonstantinou starts this out with a rubato solo guitar intro. I'll start it out from where he gets more rhythmic before the flute melody comes in. It takes a few minutes to play out at the slow tempo with a repeating 14-measure section, a contrasting 8-measure middle, and then it returns to the first section. Papakonstantinou has a guitar solo on this one, so let's check out his playing. First section of the melody going again with some neat sliding pitches, joined by Antonoglou on the next section to the end. Track 5 is an Antonoglou original shoplifting. This one features Yursi's funky electric bass. There's an intro section with locked-in hits by everyone into a funky bass and drum interlude before the main flute melody. has a guitar solo with some edgy tone, using repetition to build up the tension. On this one, let's hear Antonoglou's flute solo. That ending, so I wanted to let it play out. From there, Yersos gets some funky bass time into the final melody section that also has a really fun ending. Track 6 is a Papakonstantinou original Magenta, and he starts out this tune with a solo guitar opening. I skipped over most of his opening on track 4, so let's hear him set this one up. The melody is uplifting in an ABA shape, and I like the way guitar joins in some phrases with the flute. Let's keep listening. Yersos is up first with a sensitive and melodic acoustic bass solo. Antonoglou has a flute solo with some fiery and breathy articulation, and Papakonstantinou has a warm and fluid guitar solo that dissolves into bowed bass and drums in a spacious interlude before the guitar gets things in rhythm again for a final melody segment. Track 7 is a Papakonstantinou original Cinnamon Tea. Papa Giorgio gets it started with some subtle drums, and the 28-measure 6/8 flute melody is very charming. Let's check it out. Yerzos is up first for an acoustic bass solo that works way up high. Let's check out Antonoglou's flute solo on this one. From there, and it repeats the first sections of the melody to a slowed ending. And the recording finishes up with a Papakonstantinou original Rosy Fingered Dawn. Yerzos gets this started on solo acoustic bass. I'll jump in from the easygoing melody. It's got a unique phrasing with sections of 14, 16, 14, and finally 14 measures. The last part is the same as the first. Let's hear as much of the melody as we can. Yeah, a really dreamy sounding melody. Papakonstantinou solos first on guitar, so let's check him out for our final sample. Antonoglou follows on flute, and once more through the melody finishes the tune and the recording. A debut from the Gangtet from Thessaloniki, and they have a lot going on, sometimes peaceful and flowing, other times intense and funky on a program of all original compositions. They're able to cover both realms, largely due to Nicholas Yerzos' versatile playing on both acoustic and electric bass. Yannis Antonoglou usually has the melodic spotlight on flute, and his solos are engaging throughout with spicy articulation and breathy intensity. Andreas Papakonstantinou contributes half the tunes, and his guitar playing provides the harmonic basses, a lot of the rhythmic pulse, and a lot of atmosphere too. He has a warm tone and mixes a jazz fluidity along with rock sentiments, depending on the situation. Yannis Papageorgios' drumming is flexible from straight beats to swing, and he can be subtle on the softer material. Overall, there's a lot of youthful enthusiasm and a unique combination of influences that come together. It will be interesting to see where they go from here.
Yeah, this album was rather a surprise. The Gangtet delivers 8 appealing tracks with some interesting approaches to soloing. Flute solos tend to sound fluttery on jazz albums, but here I liked the way Yannis Antonoglou could alter his tone and go from that bird-like sound to something rougher, even ancient-sounding at times. He'll often use different styles of attack with the same solo. I also thought the idea of having both acoustic and electric bass alternate between certain tracks livened up the overall sound. Having Nicholas Yersos on the electric bass under Andreas Papakonstantinou's guitar on track 1 gave me the impression that I was hearing a Fender Rhodes piano. Actually, he mistook it. I was looking for what that was. Papakonstantinou also uses different tones, from clean to slightly dirty, to alter his expression. And Yannis Papageorgiou shows some funky groove ability on track 5's Shoplifting, and keeps the music moving throughout. It's an overall traditional approach with subtle alterations that are enough to make the listener sit up. I enjoyed listening to this.
Now, I had this recording on my list because it came up in my regular checks, and the inspiration for the whole Greek week I'll tell you about later, but I needed one more album to make the list complete, and I didn't have one. Now, the label this next recording is on, Puzzle Music, we've done recordings from before, but for some reason their recordings don't show up on a lot of new release lists, so I went to their homepage, and here this was, Some Things I've Never Told You by bassist Yorgos Pantazopoulos. This came out December 5th, just in time.
Yeah, and it's quite a find also.
It certainly was.
I liked it a lot.
So Yorgos Pantazopoulos was born in Athens and started playing classical guitar at a young age. In 2017, he began his studies at the jazz department of the Ionian University, specializing in jazz bass in both the undergraduate and master's programs. He studied with an Erasmus scholarship at Codarts University in Rotterdam in 2021. Since 2017, he's been working as a professional musician in large concert venues, festivals, and clubs both in Greece and abroad, working with George Kontraforos, Dimitris Angelikis, and many others. And this is his debut recording as a leader. From the notes on the Puzzle Music page, Yorgos himself says about the recording, quote, "The music on this album was written during a particularly transitional period in my life. Many things were changing, but the music was always there, a constant reminder that it would always be by my side. This album is dedicated to my family and to all the people I met in Corfu, friends, brothers, and human relationships that will accompany me forever." On the recording, Yorgos Pantazopoulos on the bass, Alexandros Likothenesis on piano and Rhodes, and Panagiotis Themos on the drums. The arrangements and production are done by Yorgos Pantazopoulos. Recording, mixing, and mastering by Yorgos Priniotakis at Artrex Studios, Athens. And the first 5 tracks on the recordings are all original compositions by Pantazopoulos. Starting with Coffee Break. There's some New Orleans flavor in the coffee in the beat here that Themis gets things going with. Yeah. Piano and bass join in for 16 measures, setting up a nice bouncy groove. The melody here is in an A-B-A shape of 16, then 12, and then 16 measure sections. Likothenesis has great choppy articulated chords and finds the inherent bluesy twists in the tune. They go around once and then again after a 4-measure interlude. Let's hear things get started. nice bass bounce from Pantazopoulos there. Lykothenesis gets more and more playful, working into improvisations. Let's come back to hear some of Pantazopoulos' bass solo on this one. Great earthy tone and clean articulation, working up high there. After once more through the melody, Pantazopoulos gets another short solo break into some hard vamping to a fun finish. Track 2 is Night Ride. Pantazopoulos gets a very cool solo bass opening for this one, nice falling glisses, intervals, and a harmonic. Let's check it out. From there, he gets it into tempo and is joined by the others on an introductory section. Let's come back in to hear the main minor melody. It's in a 32-measure AABA shape with Pantazopoulos taking the B section. It moves into a hushed section with restrained piano phrases from Lykothenesis, and then builds up with a loping bass walk for piano improvisations. Pantazopoulos gets a solo too. He has a great melodic sense, which you don't always get in bass solos. They vamp on the descending intro chords for Themis to build up some drum energy before taking it through the melody once more, and a little tag ending to finish things up. Track 3 is Lucy, a summer love story. This one is unique because of Pantazopoulos' pulsing, repeated note bass line that starts it and continues on. After an 8-measure piano chord intro, the main piano melody is light and couched in chords. It seems to be 24 measures and goes around twice. Themis punctuates with light brushwork. Let's hear it get going. let's hear some of Likothenesis' piano improvisations on this one once he's built up the energy, and check out Pantazopoulos' switch up to a driving walking bass underneath. Exciting playing. He comes back to the melody and bass pulse and works to a naturally faded ending. Track 4, In the End, It's All Worth It. There's bowed bass on the start of this tune with rubato piano ripples and cymbal rolls. I'll leave you to check that out, and we'll take a listen from the start of the 20-measure ballad melody. It's got pretty chords and sensitivity to dynamics with some fun little pauses in the flow. And very tastefully played. And we definitely need to hear some of Pantazopoulos' solo on this one that really sings out. And after the solo, Likothenesis brings back the melody to an ending with pretty rippling lines like the opening. And the last original composition from Pantazopoulos, track 5, It All Started Here, fun and funky for this one, started out by a great bass riff from Pantazopoulos. The tune is a 40-measure construction with a contrasting middle bridge section and a vamping final 16 measures. Let's hear it the first time around. Lykothenesis gets a solo that works back into the melody, and then things come to a sudden pause and then build up again from a rising piano bass line. So let's jump in from there. And it fades out. And now we've got three interesting covers of older tunes, starting with Confessin, a tune that goes all the way back to 1930 from Doc Doherty and Ellis Reynolds. The song was first produced with a different set of lyrics as Looking for Another Sweetie, and then it was reborn as Confessin with new lyrics. Pantazopoulos and Lykothenesis have some playful trades for an introduction. I think everyone knows this famous melody, which gets served up on the bass here, and it's really charming. Pantazopoulos continues on into a solo, followed by Lykothenesis, and then Themis gets to join in on the fun, so let's check out some of his drums too on this tune. And back to the melody from there, and a fun extended ending. Track 7 is Nature Boy, a tune by Eden Abez, made famous by Nat King Cole in 1948. This is an extremely cool solo bass exposition. Pantazopoulos starts it out with an intro section that lasts more than a minute and a half, ending in some harmonics. Let's join in where he brings in the melody of the tune. And let's also check out these grooves and neat double-stopped glisses. What's that joke about everybody talks during the bass solo? I think you'll be too captivated in this one to break into conversation.
I always listen to the bass solo.
Oh, yeah. All right, and the recording ends up with an interesting choice. Irving Berlin's Puttin' on the Ritz from 1929, published with two different sets of lyrics since Irving Berlin rewrote the lyrics in 1946 for the Fred Astaire movie Blue Skies. And Mike, I remember when we were young, this became a hit again in 1982 by the Dutch artist Taco.
Oh, God, I remember that, yeah.
Which had the obligatory MTV video at the time.
You know, I had almost forgotten that, and now you've reminded me of it, and I don't know.
Well, I went back to watch it on YouTube just for old time's sake, and interestingly, the first comment said Irving Berlin was still alive when this cover was released, which made him, at 95, the oldest living songwriter to have a hit on the Billboard charts during his lifetime. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's pretty interesting. This gets a kind of sad rubato piano intro into bowed bass. I guess that's the If You're Blue opening lyric idea. Let's check it out. After the bowed section, a one-note bass idea builds up tension under piano. Let's jump in from the drum fill into the speedy bowed bass melody section. Themis gets to do some light drumming there, into a fast-tempo piano solo over driving walking bass, and things dissipate into a final short bowed melody section to wrap it up. And that's the album. A very impressive debut as a leader recording from Yorgos Pantazopoulos. He not only impresses with his technique, but also with his mature musical concept. His own compositions have a lot of variety, from bluesy early jazz roots influences to pretty ballad melodies and fun and funky ideas. The arrangements on the 3 covers of old classic tunes are inventive and a lot of fun too. He can lead with bass melodies, and his bass intros and solos throughout are quite imaginative. Alexandros Lykothenesis impresses on piano with rollicking bluesy playing and sensitively touched softer sections, and Pangiotis Themis covers the drums from light brushwork to hard swinging grooves. I didn't see this release show up anywhere other than the Puzzle Music homepage, so I'll definitely be checking in frequently to make sure I don't miss any new ones on this label. This recording was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I thought it was exhilarating, in fact. Yorgos Pantazopoulos has a great feel for all of the styles that he plays on bass, and a great sense of groove that he always keeps up when he solos. He has a really bold tone as well, an enormous presence when he plays. He's the boldest of the 3 musicians on the album, though of course Alexandros Lykothenesis can't help but take the lead at times. His solo on the heavily Pantazopoulos-led Confession is a highlight. In fact, that track should be heard in full. It's really great.
Yeah.
The entire trio sounds enthusiastic about playing throughout, and that's really one of the points that makes this album so exhilarating.
Yeah.
And that's always a quality that will bring the listener in. This is one for the collection, I think. I got to have a copy of this.
I think there's a CD coming out in January.
All right.
Yeah, definitely like to have a copy of this one. All right, and on to the last recording, which was the inspiration for Greek Week to begin with. And this is from the Iako Trio. It's called Woven on Fair Weather Records. It came out December 5th. Back in episode 183, Stylistic Dissonance from September of 2024, we talked about a recording, Northwind. That was on Puzzle Music. Mm-hmm. And that was by bassist Dinos Manos that featured pianist Leandros Pasias and also drummer Yorgos Klontsos Chrysidis, who we'll hear on this recording. It also had guest James Wiley on tenor sax, a New Zealander now based in Thessaloniki. And Leandros wrote to me to let me know that this recording was coming out, and so I've had it waiting in the wings. And as I said, we built Greek Week around anticipation of this release. Formed in 2016, Iako Trio has released 2 previous recordings, Ode to Yanis in 2018 and Odyssey in 2022. They perform at venues and jazz events around Greece, often featuring guest musicians. The project started as a tribute to the work of well-known Greek classical musician and composer Yannis Konstantinidis, in particular his arrangement of familiar melodies and rhythms of Greek traditional music. The members of Iako Trio have a deep knowledge of Konstantinidis' work, and they formed this trio in order to experiment with his work and reintroduce it to the audience from their own musical perspective through their first album, Ode to Yanis. That's why they named the band Iako Trio. So, Ya from Yanis and Ko from Konstantinidis. On the recording, the trio is Leandros Pasias on piano, Vangelis Vraknos on the bass, Yorgos Klontsos Chrysidis on drums, Haris Lambrakis on the ney, James Wiley on alto and tenor saxophone, and this was recorded and mixed and mastered at Q Productions by Yannis Mavroudes at Thessaloniki in March 2024. And the cover art is designed by internationally celebrated and award-winning design studio Beetroot, the notes say. So take a look at the cover as well. The recording is going to get underway with the Pasias original Mr. McCoy, and Leandros says this is a tribute to the late McCoy Tyner, one of his most loved pianists. Pasias gets it started with a descending chord figure section that will be the basis of the A section of the melody. Bass and drums join in on another round, and then ney and tenor sax are in on the 32-measure melody. It's got that McCoy-Tyner modal mood, and the syncopated bass and piano chord movement gives it an intensity. And I like the way the chords switch to a rising idea on the B section. Let's hear the recording get started. Stathis is off soloing from there. Let's keep on listening and check out some of his playing into some of Lambrakis' cool, breathy ney solo. Wiley follows with a muscular-toned tenor solo, and Vraknos gets a bass solo with a big rounded tone and lots of energy. Chrysitis has a drum solo too, before they build it up from the intro idea again for a final time through the melody with a fun little stretch on the ending. Track 2 is an original by Vraknos, Ghostly Wind. Leandros says this tune was created through a love's absence, feeling as a memory of something it could have happened. Vraknos gets this one going with an aggressive bass ostinato. The melody has a kind of hypnotic alternating modal harmony underneath. Wiley's on alto here, and sax and ney work a 16-measure section together over the straight beat, and then Lambrakis is alone on the ney for the next 16 measures that switches up to a swing feel over walking bass. That pattern goes around twice. Let's take a listen. Stathis is up first for a piano solo. I like how he creates anticipation with space between phrases here. Let's check out some of Wiley's alto solo on this one. It's interesting. He has a completely different tonal character and personality on alto than tenor. And Vraknos follows with a bass solo. This is his last one on the recording, so I want to check out a little bit of his playing before we go on. After another run through the melody, the ending features some final drum work from Chrysitis. Track 3 is a Passius original, Kludza, and this is a tribute to his friend and bandmate Chrysitis, an admiration music letter to his amazing drumming. Chrysitis has a really cool subdivided groove with the hi-hat on this one, and Passius is on Rhodes making a funky atmosphere. Wiley's on tenor here. The Saxon ney melody is really long and has some surprises with harmonic twists and differing phrase lengths. We won't get all of it in a sample, but let's check it out. Wiley solos first, with smooth lines that contrast with the pulsing groove underneath, and Passius follows on Rhodes, so let's hear some of his playing on Rhodes on this tune. Some backing from the winds that transition back to the melody that fades out on the final repeating phrase. Track 4 is another Passius original impromptu, and he says this is a spontaneous melody composed through a jam session and then arranged for this album. This has a hypnotic octave bass pattern throughout over a slow groove. The modal melody in the winds starts out sleepy, but keeps evolving and getting more serpentine. Lambrakis and Wiley float out improvised lines together on this one. Let's hear some of their playing together. After building to a climax, the winds fade and the trio continues more quietly to an ending. Track 5 is also by Passeus Myrtilo, and he says it's a tender composition dedicated to all that remained unfulfilled and never came to be. This is delicate and pretty. Lambrakis' name melody lines are gently harmonized by Wiley. There are just 2 short phrases with a little 2-measure interlude between. Chrysitis' Tom fills add atmosphere. Passeus has a lightly touched piano solo. Let's come back in to hear some more. Is back from there for another round before Lambrakis has some ney improvisations, and then Wiley joins back in on some lines to a soft ending. Track 6 is by Chrysitis, Speakin' Voice, and Leandros says this is a composition inspired by the journey of creation, the artist's impulse to make and to share. Passeus is back on Rhodes for this one that starts out with holds and cymbal rolls and some primeval ney and sax. Chrysitis gets a throbbing beat going for a new groove that gets legato ney and sax lines. Let's hear as much as we can in a minute. Winds add little flourishes, and then Lambrakis is off on a ney solo. So let's hear some more of his ney playing. Wiley follows on alto with a slow-burning solo, and he joins in with Lambrakis on softer lines that work to a faded ending. And the recording ends up with a Vraknos composition, Sweet Lotus. Leandros says this is a piece which was composed on the purpose of creating something very simple and nearly childish, but at the same time quite different and almost capricious. Passius makes a solo piano start, gentle and rubato. We'll take a listen about a minute in, where Lambrakis' delicate ney melody starts. Chrysitis' drum brushes are hushed below. And Passius gets to finish this one solo like he began it, so let's hear the ending. And that's the recording. Modal Mediterranean influences mixed with a variety of grooves and moods, from intense to dreamy, to make this recording distinctive. The Jaco trio have good synergy, working tightly together over changing rhythmic landscapes. Leandros Passius often shows his sensitive touch on solos that have good phrasing, space, and chord voicings. Vangelis Vraknos lays down catchy bass lines and ostinatos, and he has a distinctive tone in his improvised solos. Yorgos Klontsos Chrysitis is versatile with funky straight beats, swinging cymbals, and delicate fills on quieter passages. James Wiley adds a lot of atmosphere with his harmonizing on melody lines and his unique tonal qualities on both alto and tenor saxes, with fine solos on each horn. And the overall mood on the recording owes a lot to Lambrakis' ney playing, which is featured on the melodies and in improvised solos. It's a unique sound that we don't hear very often, but it's really captivating. And I'm going to go back and check out their two previous recordings over the year-end break, Mike, when I've got time to just relax and listen to some previously recorded music.
Yeah, when's that going to be? I think we're going to have some time coming up pretty soon, hopefully.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
Well, to me, this album, the way it was programmed was really kind of what caught me, and it kind of felt like a sunset to me. Started out brightly and energetically and slowly slowing down to a more twilight, and finally with the last track a nighttime feeling. I personally enjoyed the opening faster tracks the most. The band has a great swing feel, and Vangelis Vraknos on bass especially impressed me with his solos that kept the swing feel going. I gotta tell you, these Greek bass players have this really great sense of swing.
Yeah.
They just keep it up. We went from those first two tracks to the breezy mid-tempo Klautzoa. Then the nighttime started with impromptu and continued from there. Speaking Voice was at a more lively rock jazz tempo. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Steely Dan, really. But by Sweet Lotus, we're closing in on the wee hours of the morning. I was pretty intrigued to hear the neigh on a jazz recording. You mentioned this yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so unusual. Hats off to Haris Lambrakis for playing it. James Wiley was melodic on the sax, and Leandros Passias on piano shows versatility and a good feel for the moods of these tracks. Yorgos Klontsos Chrysidis sets a great swing feel on the drums. It's an enjoyable, fresh-sounding album, good for listening to in the early evening, I'd say.
I'll listen to it any time of the day, well as all these albums, yeah. I think we deserve honorary Greek citizenship so we can spend our retirement in Greece and the Mediterranean checking out all the new jazz releases there.
I would not mind doing that, hanging out in the tavernas all night and just eating like snack foods and drinking and talking to the locals. I would love that.
In lieu of that, I'll gladly accept CDs of all of these recordings we heard tonight.
So would I.
All right, it's been a fun Greek week, and we've got one more regular episode coming up next week, episode 240, before we get to our Favorites of the Year episode. And we've got everything already lined up. So what's on the classical side, Mike?
Okay, so next week for our last episode, I'm kind of revisiting some artists that we heard earlier in the year. The first is L'Arpeggiata, conducted, directed, Theorbo, Baroque Harp, and everything else by Cristina Pluhar. And this one features also Rolando Villazon as tenor. The album is called Orfeo son io, and it sort of traces the story of Orfeo through mostly Monteverdi's opera, but different settings of this story. It's a pretty interesting program, so I thought we'd check that out. Also, we're going to hear the Nash Ensemble again. We heard them in Debussy earlier in the year, and we're going to close the year out with Ravel. I get to hear his wonderful introduction and allegro for flute, harp, clarinet, and string quartet again. One of my favorite works. And it's a chance to close out Ravel's anniversary year. Right. This is the 150th anniversary of his birth this year, with a recording of chamber works. And then to close it off for the contemporary composers, we have Jennifer Higdon, Brad Warnar, and Chick Corea, brass concertos by all three of these composers. You know, pianists, Chick Corea's in there too. So I'm curious to hear that. A little bit of brass too, and a lot of brass, a lot of different instruments from brass on this album.
Nice. On
the Naxos label.
On the jazz side, we've got a lot of variety and some people we've heard from before. We're going to start out in the Czech Republic with pianist Imo Viklitsky and a duo live recording with bass clarinetist Pavel Hruby. Live at the Jazz Dock, that's on the Amplion label, came out December 1st. So we're always in the mood to hear some bass clarinet, and Imo Viklitsky's piano playing is always really classy. Then we're going to hear from guitarist Nigel Price and his organ trio, It's On. And we've heard from this trio before. They always put on a good show. This album was released in October, but you could only get it through his Bandcamp site on CD, and now it's available on streaming for the first time.
Yeah, from this Friday.
Yeah, since December 12th, so we want to check that out. And then I've got a really interesting double sax album that's Andrew Gould on the alto and Sam Dillon on the tenor saxophone. It's called Trade-Off. It's on Pinch Records, and it features Stephen Feifke on piano as well. And from what I've heard of it, it sounds really exciting. So that'll be the last new recording we hear this year.
As we say goodbye to 2025.
Yeah. Then we'll have our Favorites of the Year episode. That'll come out, I think, a day late. I'll try to get that out on December 30th.
Holiday obligations, you know.
Yeah, and then we'll take a week off to get refreshed and come back again in January. So that's the plan anyway.
But we won't be refreshed. We'll just do the episode.
Probably not. Anyway, a lot to look forward to. We want to say thanks, as always, to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo. Any final thoughts, Mike?
Well, I think the next time we do an episode of Greek music, we need to get some Greek catering over here so that just to make the episode that much more exciting.
I'd be all for that because I love Greek food too.
Do we know anyone who would do that?
No.
Not here in Japan.
Not here, no.
Well.
Yeah, there's a lack of Greek restaurants in Japan. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
There's an Italian restaurant on every corner, but there's no Greek restaurants. Jeez, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I'll have all of these recordings, both classical and jazz, up on our Deezer playlist a few hours after this episode is published, and we'll have a link to it from our Facebook page as well. So we'll be back again next week, and until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.